Funny enough that we're talking about bugs and glitches. So guns obviously had their bug and glitches, but it made the game better. Without the bugs and glitches, the game would not be the guns that we knew back then. But with that being said though, Back for Blood, they did it in such a way that was just so bad. Basically what ended up happening with Back for Blood with their speedrunning community is the developers essentially used the speedrunning community to figure out all the bugs in the game. And by bugs, we're talking about abuses that they could use to speed up their playthrough, to speed run through the game. And then what they did was not only did they fix certain bugs in the game that made speedrunning easier, they also made it so that they nerfed all their movement skills. All movement skills essentially got nerfed. And as you say it before, because speedrunning through it in public lobbies, which is not good when 3 other people get left in the dirt, feels bad, which is kind of true. But I also feel like if that's the case, there are certain ways to alleviate that. For example, developers could have easily, and I mean easily, made it so that there was a single player mode. You know what I mean? They could have made it so that you could go in parties of 1, 2, 3, or 4. They could have given that option for the community to do that, but they didn't. They basically made it so that you're forced to play with 3 other people. So as a people who want to speedrun that game, they couldn't, because you would have to leave the 3 other characters behind in the dirt. Like you said, it feels kind of bad because the 3 other people that are left far behind don't know what's happening. So in that sense, I kind of understand that people, well, not people, but developers want to make it so that the games feel great to the majority of their player base. If the game does not feel good to the majority of the player base, then they're not really going to do it. At least that's how I see it. Personally, I think that if you make the game better overall, it should be fine, but it's just that more often than not, people just are going to complain about everything. And it's so bad though. Back 4 Blood was actually a really decent game. It's just they made some very questionable changes in it. Of course, I like Borderlands as a great example of a game with glitches and bugs that made it what it is. Exactly. Borderlands 2 is by far one of the bigger ones where you have just certain things that make the game better. For example, rocket boosting in Borderlands 2 with what's his face? Salvador, thank you. Salvador essentially had it so that he was essentially the fastest skier on New Game Plus because he had the ability to exactly do rocket jumping. And there were different bugs and glitches that they could abuse to speed up their playthrough by either A, doing tons of damage that was not intended for, or B, movement tech that wasn't intended for. But what made the game good was that there's different categories of it. They, at least in speedrunning, they have different categories where you have, Salvador, you have Zero runs, you have Maya runs, but then you have New Game Plus Salvador runs, and then you have Salvador runs no rocket jumping. You have all these different types of speedrun categories, which allows for people to really experiment. That was done via using a high damage rocket launcher on the left hand. The right hand was any gun with unlisted pellets. Exactly. So there are games that are essentially being kept alive by its speedrunning community. But not only that though, it's just an extra layer that people can take advantage of. It really sucks to see when developers decide to change something in the game that really made the game honestly better. That's how I'd like to view it. With Limbus company, them getting rid of skill cycling, it feels bad because number one, I really like being able to have the ability to cycle through my skills faster, but not only that though, it added an extra layer of strategy because with the passive rework, do I want to say, for example, if I have Rodion on my team and she needs 5 Wrath for her Gambler passive, and I'm only using R. Heathcliff, and R. Heathcliff is the only character that can provide me Wrath, but the Wrath is locked into his skill 1, do I make the decision where I cycle through his skill 1 knowing that I'm not going to get access to Rodion's passive, or do I eat the bullet and just use my skill 1 to get Rodion's passive online? which is, you know, a level of strategy involved. And not another layer on top of that is, if I have 5 wrath, am I going to use an ego to that uses wrath, and as a result I no longer gain access to Rhodion's passive, which then forces me to, alright, do I make the decision to use R. Heathcliff's S1 to get wrath, or do I avoid doing that? You know, a lot of extra layers though. But of course, it's weird because now that they're quote unquote nerfing our skills, it's going to make it harder for people to clear railway extraction as well. So it feels bad, but it might be better for the longevity of the game. It's hard to say, because honestly that was just something I wish they just left in the game. It was actually such a good mechanic, honestly. I think, at least personally for me, I really enjoyed being able to cycle through my skills, because getting to Heathcliff's S3 quickly and was so beneficial. Even in railway extraction, being able to get to Don Quixote's rip space quickly was so big. It was huge. Just being able to do that was unga bunga huge, which is also kind of weird because now I feel like I have to clear railway dungeon, or not have to, but I feel like if I want to get lower turn counts on railway dungeon, I definitely have to do it now, because if not, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. But also, with that being said though, I think it also mitigates a level of RNG, because I think people who were cycling were able to have a competitive edge versus people who weren't cycling, and if people were not cycling, then they wouldn't know. Truthfully speaking though, if Project Moon just had a tutorial in the game that basically teaches you how to cycle through skills, I think that would be ideal. It would have been so much better. They could have just added a 20-second video on how to cycle through skills, and then everyone would. But nope, they're getting rid of it. Might have been too strong, which is why they might be removing, just a hypothesis. Potentially. Usually whenever they get rid of anything broken, it's to be able to open up room for other builds. But with that also being said though, I don't think it was... Okay, maybe it was very strong, but it was strong in a good way. Because even when I was still mad cycling, as in even though I was trying to go through my skill as fast as possible, even then I was still sometimes forced to use my skill 1s. It wasn't always the case where I could just unga bunga every turn cycle through my cards and only use skill 2, skill 3. There were times where I still had to use skill 1 even when I was using skill cycling, because it allowed W Corp, Dawn, and R Corp to trash literally everything. Yes, that's true, but you're not exactly nerfing them. You're nerfing everyone. All this means now is that everyone's just gonna do less damage consistently throughout the board, since everyone loses access to that. So I don't know if it actually makes it better in any way, shape, or form, but it's hard to say. Sometimes you get cornered with one skill 1 and skill 1 top and bottom. Exactly. So you're still forced to use it. And very rarely would I ever want to use my skill 1 if given the chance to use skill 2 and skill 3. I think if they do this change, what they need to do is they need to incentivize us as the player to want to use our skill 1s more than our skill 2 and skill 3. Because at the moment, why would you ever want to use the less... Or why would you ever want to use the lesser skill? Like, why would you use the inferior skill 1 when you can gain access to your skill 2 and skill 3? The game needs to make it so that using your skill 1 is tantalizing to you. And honestly and personally, I think the biggest change that would make it so that there's more of an incentive to use your skill 1 is, hypothetically, I'm not saying they should do it, but I'm saying hypothetically, if they made it so that your skill 1 gave you 2 affinities instead of 1, I feel like that would be so much better. Because then you'd be able to ego spam more. Because then you would make the debate of, well, should I be using skill 1s to gain affinities faster, or should I be using my skill 2 and skill 3 to be able to do more damage and more debuffs? I think that change would be pretty cool, but it would probably be a little bit too broken, especially if you could get 2 affinities with just using your skill 1. But with that being said though, let me know down in the comment section what you guys think about this. Do you like the changes? Do you not? I personally don't, but that's just me. And yeah, I stream Monday to Friday on Twitch, and as usual, I have a Discord community where we talk about all things Limbus as well as other gacha games. So, hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys later. Bye for now.